Dream machine. Dicom HL7I18 and snap. We're building the future, never looking back.
Let me ask you a strange question. What do the Beatles have to do with the invention of the CT scanner? Because at first glance, you would think absolutely nothing. By the time CT scanners were becoming available in hospitals, the early 1970s, the Beatles had already broken up. The band officially split in 1970, and the first clinical CT brain scans were happening about a year later. So what's the connection? Well, it runs through this company called EMI. Yes, the same EMI that released Beatles records around the world. But EMI wasn't just a music label. It was also an electronics and engineering company with a major research division outside London known as EMI Central Research Laboratories. And inside those labs, there was an engineer named Godfrey Hounsfield that was working on a completely different kind of revolution. Not music, but medical imaging. Now here's where the story gets interesting. The Beatles were one of the most commercially successful bands even up until this day. They're one of the most best-selling bands of all time. Now, their albums sold in enormous numbers, and that revenue helped sustain EMI as a company. And some of that money went to the research division where Hounsfield worked. So while the Beatles were helping EMI fill the bank account with hit records, the company had the freedom to fund long-term research projects that didn't immediately look like commercial products. This would include projects like computed tomography. Now, of course, medical imaging had been around for a long time. X-rays had existed since 1895. The real breakthrough here wasn't the radiation itself, but it was the math. Hounsfield realized that if you measured X-ray attenuation from many different angles and you feed that information into a computer, you could reconstruct the internal structure of the body slice by slice. Instead of a single projection image, physicians now could see cross-sections of the anatomy. For the first time, doctors could examine the brain without surgery. The first clinical CT scan took place in 1971 at Atkinson's Morley Hospital, where physicians were able to detect a brain tumor with remarkable clarity. And just like that, diagnostic medicine entered into a new era. But CT imaging relies on ionizing radiation, and over time, our awareness as humans of radiation exposure risks has grown significantly. As CT usage expanded across the world, the medical imaging community began paying closer attention to how radiation dose is monitored and managed. There were also moments that served as important reminders of why dose oversight matters. One of the most widely discussed examples occurred in the late 2000s at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where a CT perfusion protocol error resulted in patients receiving a much higher radiation dose than intended. And now events like this reinforce the importance of safety principles like ALARA, as low as reasonably achievable. Today, imaging informatics plays a major role in helping healthcare organizations manage dose safely and consistently. Modern imaging systems can generate structured dose information using standards like DICOM to create a radiation dose structured report. This creates detailed information about the radiation that was exposed during the imaging study. These reports can be collected into regional and national dose registries, where institutions can benchmark protocols, monitor trends, and identify opportunities to optimize imaging practices. In other words, the same informatics infrastructure that helps us manage images can help us manage radiation safely. And when you zoom out a bit, the whole story becomes a little poetic. In the late 1960s and early 70s, the Beatles were changing how we experienced music. They were experimenting with recording techniques, studio engineering, and sound in ways that transformed pop culture. Meanwhile, inside EMI's research labs, Hounsfield was quietly transforming how the world could see inside the human body. Two revolutions, one musical, one medical, both connected to the same company. You might even say that while the Beatles were helping people come together through music, doctors were gaining a new tool that would help them better understand the human body. And all of it happened because a record company decided to invest in research. So the next time you hear a Beatles song, remember, those records didn't just change music. They helped support the research environment that produced one of the most important diagnostic tools in modern medicine. Which raises a fun question. If the Beatles helped fund the invention of CT scanners, what other strange pop culture cross-references might exist in the history of medical imaging? Because I promise you, there are more stories where science, healthcare, and culture intersect in ways you might not expect. And that might be a story for another video. So until then, we'll just let it be.